Hey everyone, welcome to Conference Connection with myself, Dr. David Morgan, and my amazing friend Chad Hymas.
Cohort and crime. Let's just call it what
and
it is.
This marks a new episode, a new era in Conference Connection.
A new
season of Conference Connection, because instead of me being 800 miles from Chad, I'm like 100, maybe 80. I don't know how far I am
even
from
that, buddy. You're like
Valley
60
here.
miles away. Yeah.
60 miles away.
I look at it like this way. You're a 5-minute helicopter ride.
That's
So
perfect. Yeah, we're just
welcome to Utah.
Thank you.
We're literally you got some pictures set up. You got a couple lamps behind you. I don't know that
I got like almost like a studio now. Yeah, instead of just cramming it into wherever it fits. So yeah, we are. I can look out my window and see Mount Timpanogos, and we got Provo Airport just 5 minutes from us. So you're a 5-minute helicopter ride to Provo Airport, and then a 5-minute drive to my house. So I expect to see you here in about 15 minutes. That's all I'm saying.
Deal. I will be at the Timpanogos Temple later on tomorrow. So yes, we'll be there for sure.
Nice.
So
yeah, we're very excited to be here in Utah. We it's interesting. We moved from Utah in 1998. That's when we moved to Vancouver, Washington, and we spent almost 25 years there. When we moved there, we had 3 little kids. Now our youngest is almost 20. We raised all our family there, and then we just had the very strong feeling that we needed to be back here. And we are literally about 1 mile from the place we moved from in 1998. We are, in fact, when I'm driving to the Home Depot, which I've had to a lot to get stuff for the house, I drive right past the little townhome that we used to live in. And so it's back in the old stomping grounds.
That's good. Good deal. We're welcome. Glad to have you back. People are flocking to Utah. You're part of the flock.
I'm happy to be part of the flock. So, well, for those of you who,
I think we got the white shirt. I got it behind me. You can see it there.
That's right.
I was just there this week. I spoke at the Education Week for the administration, so that was cool.
Oh, nice!
I posted about that. So, yeah, good stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, we love. Chad and I both love BYU. We'll see you at sporting events. We'll see you at football this fall
for sure. Yeah,
I'll have to be there at football just in case we lose, because Chad doesn't take that very well.
I don't know. We're in the Big 12 this year, so I'm expecting some bad weather ahead.
That's right. So Chad's going to need some after-game therapy. We're just we'll just head to the nearest alcove we can find a quiet spot. The two of us just sit there, and I'll just kind of talk him down off the ledge. And Kristen and Shondell can go do what they want.
A Starbucks knocks me out. I'm sure. I haven't had. I don't know if there's a Starbucks in Utah County. There might be, but I don't know.
Not as many as there were in Washington. I'll tell you that much.
No, that's right. That's exactly right. Well, welcome.
So we are. Welcome here. So if people are new to Conference Connection, what this is it's brought to you by Onward Productions. This is Shane and Mandy Johnson in Montpelier, Idaho, rather. She messaged me the other day. It was minus 21 degrees. It was like minus 49 with wind chill. It was ridiculous. When we had that cold snap. But they formed this several years ago, this platform, and they just do a lot of good, very inspirational messages on social media. And a couple of years ago, they asked if Chad and I would get together periodically and review talks from the most recent General Conference. And that's exactly what we do. So we are in season 3 right now. We are in October 2022 conference. And the talk we are going to discuss today is Wholehearted by Michelle Craig, who is the first counselor in the Young Women General Presidency. And she's awesome. I love this talk.
Her talk,
the women of the church are unparalleled.
The talk is awesome. The talk's incredible.
The talk is great.
Yeah.
And what I usually do is I give us a little background on our speaker. So let me pull that up. And this is regarding Sister Michelle D. Craig. She was sustained as the first counselor in the Young Women General Presidency, March 31st, 2018. Well, she's coming up on 5 years. This may be the last time we heard from her in General Conference. They usually serve about 5 years. Sister Craig was serving as a member of the primary general board at the time of her call. Sister Craig has served in many ward and stake positions in the primary, young women, and Relief Society organizations. She has served as temple ordinance worker in the Provo, Utah temple and gospel doctrine teacher in Sunday school. Sister Craig served a mission in the Dominican Republic, Santo Domingo mission. So she speaks the celestial language of Spanish, which is good. She has enjoyed community service in the Parent-Teacher Association of her children's schools, Project READ, and as a school support volunteer for a National Education Foundation. And she received a bachelor's degree in elementary education from Brigham Young University. Go Cougars. Sister Craig and her husband, Boyd Craig, reside in Orem, Utah. They have 3 children and 6 grandchildren. She loves family history, temple work, reading, and enjoying time with her family. So that's 2 things we have in common with Sister Craig. We love BYU and we love our grandchildren. Right, Chad?
Yep. And I got the one too. And I even got a matching tie and a matching bow for her to wear. So we wear it to church on Sunday. So she got a tie. We match. So it's kind of cool. She comes and sits on my lap. And,
Chad's probably the most doting grandfather you ever meet. He is absolutely in love.
I don't know that I want another I only got the one. Maybe that's probably because I go all out on the one. So I don't know how that's gonna work. But I'm sure there'll be more down the road. We'll see how it works out.
There are. We have 4, 1 on the way. We'll have 5 here in just a few weeks. Number 5 is going to be born, and I can attest that you love them all just as much. I mean, with every next one that comes, there's just more love and more love. They have different personalities and stuff like that. So
that's great.
It's awesome. Great. So I hope you have the chance to have a few more as well, because
I'm sure we will.
Amazing.
I'm sure we will.
All right. Well, let's look at Sister Craig here. Wholehearted, as we mentioned, is the talk. And the little preface here, it says, we should be followers of Jesus who are joyful and wholehearted in our own personal journey of discipleship.
It's a great talk. She talks about the wavering path of the journey, right? And how we can keep that faith up. She gives some great metaphors as well.
Well, and I love just even just the title. It's a very simple title. And I think what it suggests to me is just kind of being all in about something, right? I mean, if you're going to do something, then do it well. Do it with all your heart. The scriptures teach about that in section 4 in the Doctrine and Covenants. It talks about if you're going to serve the Lord, serve him with all your heart, might, mind, and strength. It says just give him everything you can, and she talks about that in here.
I wrote down the words "all in" right by that paragraph. Are we all in, or are we not? I think we live in a world today, David, where there's very little room for gray with everything that's we're going through. All that the adversary has kind of rumbled up together to come at the disciples of Christ and families and the foundation of family and the values that we stand for in our faith. And she kind of hits that. She says, sometimes when we go through these challenges, her first sentence, we go through these trials, it helps to know what to expect. And then she talks about Christ's disciples, and Christ told them that times are going to get hard, so expect hard times. It's kind of prepping them that their faith is going to, it's going to waver. It's going to be up and down, up and down. And we know that with Christ's disciples. And so she's kind of prepping us in her talk that, she's going to give us some key points on how we can try and let those cycles be less and less and try and keep unwavering faith. And she does a great job.
I was talking about this with my parents not too long ago, and because I'm 53, and so my parents are in their mid 70s, late 70s, and we were talking about how kind of the church has changed over the years. And they said, back when they were my age or even younger, that there wasn't a whole lot of people didn't leave the church necessarily. They sometimes they'd go inactive because it was just hard, it was hard to get up and go or something like that. But there was a lot of going just out of kind of culture. It's like, this is what my mom did, this is what my dad did, this is what my grandparents did. And so they just continued to go to church because of that. And I think what you just mentioned, Chad, you're absolutely right, because I think we're at a time in the history of the world where that gray is just ceasing to exist. And the Lord is saying, look, you got to choose a side here. You can't just be in this middle ground. Oh, I just do this because this is what's always been done. You kind of have to decide. You have to decide, are you in or out? And we have people on both sides, and those that choose to go out, that's their choice. And I hope that they find happiness in where they go. If it's not for them, then maybe it's not for them. But those of us that are in, you got to stay. You do what you can to nurture it. And
and it's important to do it. We got to love those that have left, love those that are out.
Yes.
And that's the thing that we get a lot of beef back with, is that we get criticized for not being accepting of those that aren't in, not being accepting for those that aren't willing to sacrifice what others are willing to sacrifice. We're not allowed to do that. We have to accept them as though they are in, and be kind. I mean, you look at how Christ taught the Jews and the Gentiles together, right? When he brought them all together, and he just sat down, he put himself beneath their level and taught them, and actually just taught a few and attracted everybody else. And it wasn't about performing miracles or anything. It's just so powerful in the scriptures in the New Testament about how he taught. And so I think that those people weren't in at all. I mean, they were very critical, as it was expected, right? Christ expected it to be to get worse and worse the longer he was to live, and the closer he was getting to his time of being crucified on the cross, the harder it was going to get, the more rejection. And he was all in. I mean, all in. I think that the one time that maybe, and I don't know if he wasn't all in, but I think what makes him relatable to me, David, is the garden, when he does ask his Father in heaven to remove the cup. And then this is the key point too. He's, not thy will, but my will, which means he's willing to do it for me. And so I think sometimes when we're not all in, if we can think about our posterity, you brought up the subject of grandkids. When I think about that little girl that's my grandchild and what kind of a legacy and a disciple I'd like her to be, it changes my attitude real quick. Right. Yeah. I'll go from being down in the dumps, or maybe a little bit of unwavering faith, to, hey, I better get my butt to church today and have her sit on my lap. Otherwise, this could affect. right. So I might skip out on some Super Bowl previews and get to church, or the NBA All-Star game, and do that a little later on and spend some time with the granddaughter, because that's a
smart choice.
Right.
It is. And we're teaching them. We vote by our feet, right? I mean, we show our discipleship by our feet, by what we do. It's easy to say, oh yeah, I believe this, but it's all about what we actually do when it comes to that.
I'll take that comment. I'll sub in the word wheels.
Exactly.
You say feet, I'll just use wheels.
I'm in a
wheelchair, folks. David likes to make fun of my circumstance. I'm in a wheelchair. He does have these puns that he puts in once in a while. That was one of them.
That was one of them. Some vote with their wheels, some vote with their feet. That's right.
There you go.
Absolutely.
There you go. You're pushing me to St. Louis one day. I'm going to make you push.
You got it.
All right.
Well, and it's interesting. Okay. I'll do you one better. Speaking of wheels, Sister Craig talks about the hand carts, the Mormon hand carts.
That's where we're going. We're going right there. It's right there.
Right. And
this is cool.
Exactly. And so she talks about how she said there was this an old article that said, this morning early, a company of Mormons passed through their journey to Salt Lake. He says, women, not very delicate to be sure. Of course, they just walked 1,000 miles, dragging hand carts like beasts. One woman tumbled down in this black mud, which caused a slight halt in the procession. Little children trudged along in their strange foreign dress, looking as determined as their mothers. And Sister Craig wonders, who were these women? Were they single mothers? Their husbands perished. Had they never had a chance to be married? She's wondering what gave them the strength. And then President Joseph F. Smith makes this great comment about the pioneer women. He says, could you turn one of these women away from their convictions in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Could you darken their minds to the mission of the prophet Joseph Smith? Could you blind them with reference to the divine mission of Jesus Christ, the Son of God? No, never in the world could you do it. Why? Because they knew it. God revealed it to them and they understood it, and no power on earth could turn them from what they knew to be that truth. They were all in.
They were all
just
in.
Like you said before, Chad. They were all in.
That's a great story to share. And then she goes on to say, brothers and sisters, to be such men and women is the call of our day, right there, to be like them, right? We're going to get into muddy waters. We're going to get into muddy circumstances. And mud is it's trudging, requires us to put forth more effort. It's just not a nice coast down a sidewalk downhill. No one's ever climbed downhill. It's been an uphill journey. So I relate this to those women that was brought up in that story. That was a article, David, for those just as point of reference, that was Nebraska. The Nebraska Advertiser Midwestern United States newspaper dated July 9th, 1857 is where that was written. And I just thought that was a great, I was really pierced by that story. And then Joseph Fielding Smith's comments towards that, and how we're going to go through those trudging times, and we're not going to look all pretty. We're not going to be delicate as right. We're going to be. Yeah. We're going to look probably a little rough, probably look like the beasts. You know? We're going to look like monsters. But that's Christ's way. That is Jesus's way. Is people aren't without calloused hands. They're not without
right.
The scars of life. And so we need to be honored that we aren't prettied up with fascinated oils and delicate senses of that. I'm not saying don't wear deodorant, don't hear that message, but I'm just saying that we are to get scarred up and to get dirty feet and dirty hands, right. Like you mentioned earlier. We're supposed to do that.
I used to, when I was serving as an Elders Quorum president years ago, I would, as we talk about being ordained to a priesthood office, I would say it's not a robe and a scepter. It's coveralls and work gloves. I mean, that's what it means to be a disciple of Jesus Christ, right? It's not, oh, look at me, look at all these great, look at who I am. I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ. It means get to work. That's what Jesus Christ's disciples do, is they follow him and keep his commandments, keeping their covenants, right? She gives 3 things that we can do to try to get through those muddy times, right?
Yep. First, we can keep our covenants even when it's not easy. And I love this here. She talks about she says, I'm leaving that. She says this. Let me back up here just a little bit, David. She says, when your faith and your family or your future are challenged, when you wonder why life is so hard, when you are doing your best to live the gospel, remember that the Lord told us to expect troubles. Troubles, this is the part that I highlighted. Troubles are a part of the plan and do not mean you've been abandoned. They're part of what it means to be his. End quote. I love that. Yep. When we experience troubles and trials in our life, that means that we are his, and that he knows of our troubles, and that he's put those troubles on our path so that we can be his and be like him. He wasn't without him. None of his disciples, none of his followers were without troubles or condemnation. And so I think that we approach those troubles with humility, acceptance, and try and see how we can do those to make us, as Christ taught Simon, to be stronger. Simon has great faith, walks on the water, loses it when the water gets a little high, falls in the water. Christ reaches down, grabs him, pulls him up, and Simon begs him to never let him go. And in that moment, Simon realizes, please be with me during all my troubles. Please be with me. Just don't leave me. Don't leave me. Don't leave me. Don't leave me. Because Simon knows he's going to have more troubles. He doesn't want to forget how he felt in that moment, right? So,
when I've always thought
in the temple, I always think, I hope I can remember when I'm outside the temple how I feel inside,
right?
Because I always feel safe and secure, like I'm his. And then you go outside and go to, I don't know, Taco Bell, whatever it is, and all the world hits you, and or we get beat on Saturday by a Big 12 team, and that's just it's just a challenging time for me. I struggle. It's not.
Well, and what I find interesting is that we understand, generally speaking, that the only way to achieve to get stronger at something requires effort on our part. But like if you wanted to, they have those things for people that aren't runners, they call it couch to 5K, right? I'm just a guy that sits on my couch, and then they show, here's how you can eventually run a 5K. And it involves little steps every day. First to just get up off the couch. Next is maybe to walk half a mile, and then you continue to follow those steps over the course of a few months. And then pretty soon you're able to run 5 kilometers. And we understand, of course, that's going to take some difficulty, and my muscles are going to hurt because I'm not used to running, but eventually my muscles will get strong and I'll be able to do that thing. We understand that in business, that you don't just start out being a multimillionaire. You have to work at it. Your business starts small, and you have, fewer opportunities. And then as you grow those opportunities through risk and effort, then you're able to get more, and eventually you can, achieve success. So when it comes to our emotional development and our spiritual development, we go, well, why am I having all these trials? Heavenly Father, I thought you loved me. Why are you giving me these trials? And he's like, it's exactly the same thing. There's no difference between that and your physical development or your financial stability. You have to go through difficult things, difficult emotional and spiritual things in order to build that strength. If I'm a spiritual couch potato, if I'm going to be a spiritual 5K runner, I need to go through some difficult spiritual things. Yeah. And I think that's when she says keeping our covenants, even when it's not easy. And I might say even especially when it's not easy, those are the times when you dig deep. When you're running, when you're at 4K and you only have 1 kilometer to go, you keep going. Chad, you've told the story before when you wheeled your way from Salt Lake to Las Vegas. And there were times when you just had to focus on the road because it's all you could do, right? You just had to think, you just counted lines, you counted the stripes. And you said, I just have to go I can go one more stripe. I can go one more stripe. I can go one more stripe. That was those types of things. Emotionally, spiritually, we go through those all the time. That is how improvement happens.
I agree. The power of incrementalism. We have to take it one small thing at a time. And remember, brothers and sisters, focus on what you have and not on what you've lost. That's been such a huge benefit to me in my life. We all experience so much loss and challenges and sadness. And if we can remember to focus on what we've still been blessed to have, even if that's just as Christ teaches, just a small inkling of faith, just a small. What's the exact word that he uses in the scriptures? It's not a small seed.
It's about a mustard. Yeah, a mustard seed.
Yeah, a small mustard seed.
Tiny seed. Yeah.
You don't, and he says it doesn't take a lot for great things to happen. He says it's not about the amount or the size or the quantity of faith that you have. It's about having the faith and sustainability, sustaining faith. So just a small seed, and even the apostles say, how do you help us grow the seed? And Christ says, you don't need, it's not about the quantity or how much faith you have. It's about sustaining faith through the challenging times and keeping that mustard seed intact. That's all he says. That's all he's requiring. He's not requiring us to grow, and he doesn't say to us, allow me to grow your faith. Not at all. Sustain the small seed of faith, even during challenging times. And so that's what I relate to the power of incremental, just the small things. If I can sustain some small faith and go to him in humble prayer and ask for his understanding, or ask for him to understand my faults and forgiveness and repentance and continue to press forward, all I need, David, is to continue with that small seed of that mustard seed of faith, and how powerful that can be. For my family, the healing that I need, to overcome, to feel clean, to feel worthy of his love, all those things.
Totally agree.
I love this second part, the second that she talks about acting in faith, and she shares that cool story about her sister. You got to share that. Remember where they're doing the carpet in their house?
Yes. Actually, I'm gonna read one more thing in that first section just because it's but I really loved it. She says, living in convenience does not bring power.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
That is a powerful statement to me, because we oftentimes we just say, what's the easy way? Give me the easy way. And you know as well as I do, Chad, I mean, in the things that we speak at, as you talk to people worldwide about, different challenges they face and stuff like that, that statement is so true. They say, if you take the easy way, you take the low road, you're not going to get much power out of that. You have to do the difficult thing. That's a true principle inside and outside the gospel of Jesus Christ. So yes, her second principle. So first principle is keeping our covenants, even when it's not easy, especially when it's not easy. The second principle is we can act in faith. And so she tells this story about when they were young and they were they had to recarpet. Yeah, and this is her sister. So her sister Emily is 7 years old, and they have to they're installing new carpet in the house, which if you've ever done that is a hassle because you got to move everything. You got to get all the furniture out so they can come in and rip out the carpets and put in the new ones. So they so Emily went to sleep that night, and the carpet cleaners were coming in the morning. Well, while she was asleep, her brothers came in and took all the furniture out of her room, which is what they were supposed to do.
Yeah, and then they added
exactly. And then tore out the carpet except the bed, and then so they decided to pull a prank. They removed the rest of her belongings from the closet and off the walls, leaving the room bare, and then wrote a note and tacked it to the wall. Dear Emily, we moved. We'll write in a few days and tell you where we are. Love, your family. So she wakes up.
7-year-old girl, right?
That's terrible. Right. So she wakes up and sees an empty room, nothing on the walls, no carpet on the ground. I don't know how they got the carpet from under bed. She must have been a very sound sleeper. And she is, freaking out, thinking this is terrible. But this is the interesting thing. She says, so Emily, as an adult, thinks about what she said, how she felt. She says, I was crushed. But what would I have happened if I had just opened the door? What would I have heard? What would I have smelled? I would have known I was not alone. I would have known I was really loved. The thought never crossed my mind to do something about the situation. I just gave up and stayed in my closet crying. And yet, if I had simply opened the door, I have a similar story about this. My son and I, for his senior trip, we went to New York, to Manhattan, and he wanted to see the sights and taking some Broadway shows, and so we did that. So, and I am directionally challenged. I don't know what it is. If you get me in the helicopter, Chad, make sure someone else gives directions, because I get us to the wrong place. And so I'm looking there on my phone. We're trying to get to the Empire State Building, and so I'm looking on my phone and trying to figure out the walking directions. And then my son, he just looks up, and what do we see? Of course, you can see the Empire State Building. It's 100 stories tall, and so he can see the Empire State Building from where we're standing. It's a few blocks away, and so then we're easily able to navigate to it. And so I've got my head buried in my phone trying to figure out where I am in New York City. And he just says, Dad, look up. All it took was that action. And that this Emily, this Sister Craig's sister, same sort of thing. She's thinking, my parents have left, my family has left. All she has to do is go and open the door. And then she would see, she can hear breakfast downstairs, or she can, hear her brothers laughing because they think that she's, they played a good prank. Doing something is so important. We can't be passive. We can't be inactive. We have to do.
I agree. She says this. She said her sister made an assumption based on what she saw, but it wasn't a reflection of the way things really were. I think all too often we do that. We make assumptions based on what we see, and that's instant judgment based on the reality of how things really are. We look at the homeless and say they caused it upon themselves. We judge others for certain circumstances that they're in without knowing what the facts really are. And that's wrong of us, David, to do that. I say us because I think we're all in one form or another guilty of doing that to a family member or somebody we see at a certain venue, or someone in our church, or someone in another church, or someone in another country, whatever that might be. That, what, they live far off. It's not us. Everything's hunky-dory where we live, but they're fighting in the Middle East left and right. And we don't have to worry about that. And nothing can be further from the truth. The church gets involved in that. They're asking upon us to donate to the food program, of the church, and the welfare and the clothing department.
Humanitarian funds,
Humanitarian funds, to help out with all those that are in need of heat and warmth and food and water to drink. And so we're not to judge those that are oppressors, and we're not to judge the recipients of being the oppressing, and vice versa. We're simply to give of our resources, and we don't have to judge. We don't have to do that. Hard not to. Don't get me wrong. Hard to not get angry and feel those. But then you think about those that are going through tragedies with the earthquakes that have transpired the last months, and so many things are happening. I think the Middle East and that event that occurred in Turkey and Syria, over 25,000 right in that area, if not higher, that lost their lives. And how blessed we are to be able to be in a position to be in a free land, to where we're blessed to have the work to donate our funds and our resources to those that don't have them.
Well, and it's even my sister and her family live in Germany. Her husband's in the Air Force, and right now they can only afford to heat one room in their house because of the extremely high price of natural gas, because of the conflict in Ukraine. And so that's what they do. They wear coats all day long in their house, and then when they want to get warm, they just go into the one room that's where the heat is turned on. So it's just
reminded me of something, David. You need to get him one of these. Just get him one of these. I got it right on my desk. I hope this is inappropriate right now, but send your sister and her husband one of these. You don't need a heater when you got one of these.
This is how Chad surprised me when we came on to record today. He's wearing that thing, and
I love this thing.
I assume you'll still be married to Shondell later this afternoon.
No, she said that we wouldn't be if I were wearing that. I told her, I said, I'm going to surprise David this morning. I'm going to have this on right when he pulls it up. And she said, if you do that, I'm going to, she made a threat. She made a verbal threat to me. And I said, listen, I'll take it off during the fireside. But I ordered one of these. I mean, I love this. So I'm just saying that send them off. And I think I love that hat. Remember, you look a little, I mean, this is a Christ-like hat. It's not appealing to the eye. It's not eye candy, but it does its job. It keeps you warm.
You mentioned earlier looking rough, and so I think you just did a great object lesson about that. Right?
That was the visual for today, brothers and sisters.
That was our visual. We've progressed. We're using visual aids now.
That's right.
She talks about an example in the scriptures where lepers came to Jesus and they asked to be healed, to be cleansed from their leprosy. And one of the things that so lepers were cast out during that time. They had to live segregated from other people. But when their leprosy was cured, if it ever was cured, they had to go and show themselves to an authority, usually a religious authority, and be pronounced clean. And so Jesus told them, he says, go and show yourselves to the priests. Well, they were still leprous, but he said, go and show yourself to the priests. As they walked to where the priest was, and we don't know how far it was, could have been, 100 feet, could have been 10 miles, right? As far as what they needed to do. When they got to the priest, they were clean. Their leprosy had been healed along the way, along their journey. And surely Jesus Christ could have just healed them on the spot. He did that with many other people. But what I have found and what I find interesting is that many times he asks us to be part of that miracle. He says, do something about that. A while back in Come Follow Me, we read about Jesus' kind of first public miracle, which was changing the water into the wine at the marriage feast at Cana.
Right.
One of the things that I found interesting about that I hadn't noticed before, so there's these very big barrels that were used for water that could be filled with water. And I did the research, and each barrel holds about, it's like 27 gallons or something like that. So these are really big barrels, and there were 6 of them. And Jesus said, go and fill the barrels with water. Now, we don't know if they were partially filled, but he says, fill them to the brim. And so maybe they were half filled at the time. If they were empty, then that means they would have had to transfer about 135 gallons of water from one place to another. And I thought, and then once they are done filling the barrels, then of course they turn into wine, and that's the miracle. But I thought, why did Jesus ask them to do that? Why did he say, go fill the barrels? He could have filled the barrels. He was changing water into wine. He could have made them magically filled up, but he asked for their help. He said, I want you to do something to be part of this miracle. Lepers, I want you to go walk to the priest to be as part of this miracle. And so that second thing of acting in faith, doing what we're asked to do, even though we don't think, well, what difference is it going to make to fill a bunch of barrels? That's just water. That's not wine. Right. Or what difference does it make to walk to the priest? I'm unclean. I have leprosy. What difference does that make? He says, just do what I ask and wait for the miracle to happen. So I love that, because I'm all about action. I don't always follow my advice that way. But I love the idea that we need to do something in order to progress. It's not just going to happen to us magically.
Beautiful said. I like it. The third thing she talks about is, can we be wholehearted and joyful in our devotion? And this is kind of how she wraps up her talk. She says this. She says, when hard times come, I try to remember that I chose to follow Christ before I ever came to the earth, and that challenges to my faith, my health, and my endurance are all part of the reason I'm here. And I certainly should never think that today's trials calls into question God's love for me, or let it turn my faith in him into doubt. Trials do not mean that the plan is failing. They're part of the plan meant to help me seek God and have a higher faith in him. And so we would be very naive to think that because we're members of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, or Christian for that matter, that we are saved and trial-free and that life is going to be easy on us. we should expect deeper trials, stronger trials than those that don't have faith, because it helps bolster us up to be the foundation to be able to teach, mentor, guide, be a missionary, hold church callings, just be his servants. And when we're asked to do something by him, we will have the fortitude because we've been built up to the trials that we have, previously had. And that's our calling as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, especially, and also as a Christian. You don't have to be a member to understand that principle of this church. Christians should know that undoubtedly. We are a people of trials. We're a people of troubles, and that is Christ's way. He didn't come to the earth to save us from our trials. He came here to save us from spiritual death, and so we need to remember that.
And he came here to be the means of providing help through our trials, right? I mean, when we are, she talks about, and you referenced his suffering in the garden earlier, Chad. She talks about how when he was in the garden, and there's an interesting scripture where it says, as he started to experience the burden that was placed upon him, it says he was sore amazed, which means it was a lot more difficult than he thought it was going to be. I mean, he probably prepped himself thinking, okay, I need to do this, but he was surprised at just how difficult it was. And it says, and when he was in agony, he prayed more earnestly. When it got even tougher and more difficult to deal with, he prayed even deeper and said, Heavenly Father, please help me through this. It's just such an amazing example. When you talk about being disciples of Jesus Christ, and like you said, whether you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or whether you follow Jesus Christ through another religion, or whether you don't follow him through any religion, being a disciple of Jesus Christ, the root word of disciple is discipline. It's almost spelled exactly the same.
Yeah,
and that means we have to do something. You have to be disciplined to be a disciple. You can't just, like you said, you can't just take things as they come, or just kind of go along without any sort of direction. It requires that, like you said, on those days when it's cold out and it's snowy and and there's a great sports event on TV and you're going, man, I don't want to go to church. This is terrible. But your discipline kicks in and you say, you know what, this is the right thing to do. We'll get out there and we'll brave the snow, and you can put on that goofy hat if you want to, and so you're completely.
You can also record it nowadays and then come and watch it instead of come follow me. I mean, there's ways around this. There's loopholes.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, that idea of doing the difficult thing at the difficult time is just very important, and you're right. That's how she ends. She says, "I am inspired by the wholehearted, whole-souled discipleship of the widow who threw her 2 mites into the temple treasury." So she gave her all. You remember that story? People contributing money to the treasury, and people throwing in a lot of money. Maybe for our day, tens of thousands of dollars, right?
And she gave all she had.
Exactly, and she comes in and puts $1 in the treasury, and which relatively little compared to what others were putting in. But Jesus said that was all she had. And the other guys were just giving what their extra was. They had already bought their boats and their summer homes and their, all their fancy things. And they were just giving the extra after they had fed themselves first, so to speak. And she was literally getting ready to go hungry because she was giving all she had. And that type of discipleship is really what our Heavenly Father asks of us. It's a very tough ask, no question about it.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I love her conclusion where she says, David, she bears her testimony of the living day prophet, and then she says, when I stumble, I will keep getting up, relying on the grace and enabling power of Jesus Christ. I will stay in my covenant with him and work through my questions by study of God's word, by faith, and with the help of the Holy Ghost, whose guidance I trust. I will seek his spirit every day by doing the small and simple things. Remember the small mustard seed. It's not about how much faith, it's the small and simple things.
I love that. And right after she says that, she says, this is my path of discipleship. Stumbling, getting up, going again. That's perfect, because we're all going to stumble. We put too much focus on the stumble. We think, oh, stumbling is bad. Stumbling is wrong. If I stumble, I should just lay down here in the dirt. No, we get back up. every single time. It's okay to stumble.
Right.
We are going to stumble. We should come to expect that from our lives. Well, this has been wonderful. I really enjoy these times we have to discuss these talks together, and we hope that this is something that's inspirational to you as you review these talks. We're coming up on the end of this season here pretty soon, and then we'll have another season come after that with the new General Conference.
Absolutely.
And it's it's a great blessing to be able to do this, to have living prophets, to have these good women and men leaders of the church who teach us these amazing principles. It's just inspires me to be a better person.
Me too. I'm all with you on that. So
awesome.
Well,
thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thank you all for joining us today. God bless you all. We look forward to seeing you on the next with second and fourth Sundays. Every second and fourth
Sundays, Conference Connection. Yep. We'll see you next time.
Take care.